for that little
helpful as ever, aren't
well,
they?
that's been sprinkled on. Well, I will say as well, I mean, I think they brought up some very, very good points about this upcoming match as well. And I'm quite surprised as well that in their predictions, Josh, they felt like that the last match of the day, the Florida match versus Washington, was the one that was like up in the air. I feel like this one has a lot of potential to be quite close.
Well, Boston did fairly well at the beginning of the June Joust, but I think people have started to cool off on their Boston stocks after that loss yesterday to the Paris Eternal. And I think part of the reason for that is that they didn't really show an ability to crush those Orisa compositions. Yeah, it was a really close game, right? It goes to 5 maps, it goes the full distance, and if Boston were a little tighter towards the end, they probably could have taken that win away. But I think the way in which the match played out, where they kind of struggled on maps that weren't inherently better for their style, worries you slightly going up against the Gladiators, who most people, I think, would say are fairly significantly stronger than Paris right now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption to make as well. Let's take a look at the Boston Uprising starters and who they're going to be fielding for the match ahead for today. And it's going to be some of the usual players as well that we're all used to seeing thus far. I mean, Punk actually did get some playtime as well recently.
He did,
but this is the roster that they've been kind of running as basically as Gabe Osea has been. I think when he got into the country, I imagine they've just been playing this guy full time. But outside of that, no real outside. What do they call it? What's the baseball term, Josh? You watch a lot of meat sports.
Yeah, I'm the baseball guy.
Well,
you should really ask me what the terminology
You're really into
is.
baseball, aren't you? It's like a little free ball, little fastball. I don't know what it's called.
Curveball? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, maybe I think that's.
That's unbelievable that you couldn't think of the word curveball. Yeah, no big curveballs in this roster for sure. This team has been doing fairly well though in the June Joust, right? They're 3-4 overall coming into this match, but the majority of their wins have been gained during that June Joust period. At the beginning, where they were able to go 2-0 right at the start and looked really hot. If they can keep that momentum today, if they get a win, they're into the play-ins for the June Joust. That would be a huge, huge performance for Boston to equalize their season, go 500. There's another little North American term for you, Brent, just slipping that one in, and be able to dispatch the Gladiators.
Let's take a look at the Gladiators here. And yeah, I mean, that's the real storyline, I guess, we're going in here, is that the team that wins this match, they qualify for the knockouts on the Sunday. And that's what all of these teams that can qualify, I suppose, are going to be playing for, essentially. They want to be making it far in that June Joust. As you can see here, you've got Kevster and Birdring as a DPS duo. Birdring, one of the players that Danny was highlighting on the desk as well, in terms of his raw prowess when he's playing the Ashe and the hit scan, as well as that. Do you expect, I mean, you proposed a question, Josh, to the desk about Gladiators playing a lot of these Orisa comps. Do you think they're going to be coming into this match the same again, given how successful it was against Boston the last time Boston was last seen played?
I think they probably do stick to majority Orisa compositions, but I don't know that that's a lock. The reason I asked the desk that question is because I think it's a really interesting one that we'll only really know when we watch them play. The meta overall does appear to be trending in the direction of that Moira, Lucio, Reaper, Echo composition, but that doesn't mean that everybody has to play it. There's definitely teams that have been getting large success out of the Orisa, like Atlanta and the Gladiators, and Paris Eternal, though, at a slightly lower level, but still very fearsome team at the moment in the June Joust, and we're able to deliver Boston a loss just this week. To me, though, the question is so interesting because the Gladiators are probably favored either way you slice it. If they take the mirror, I would still favor the Gladiators in that position, even though we haven't seen too much of it. And if they play the Orisa comps, we already know that Boston haven't looked as tight playing against that. So I think it really is open for the Gladiators. There isn't a de facto better strategic choice, which means it's just super interesting which one they decide to opt for.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I think across the board, really. I think everyone's expectations are for the Gladiators to come into this one and really be the dominant team. As you can see, the overall season standings at the top of your screens, 4-2 for the Gladiators. This is a team that obviously had a ton of hype coming into them in the 2021 season, whereas the Boston Uprising, obviously, they've been shoring up a lot of their defenses coming into it. 3-4. But both teams looking for the win today to try and secure their place in the knockouts this Sunday.
And here we go, mirror comps to begin with as well. Boston Uprising taking the point really early on as Gladiators take the high ground instead, which gives them an ability to scout out what Boston are doing And this composition, it's all about positioning. At the moment, the Boston Uprising with a better one, because when the Gladiators recontest, they have to go through that area. But Birdring's Wraithform has already been forced out, and that makes him such a target.
It's all about the cooldowns, forcing them out. You can see just applying pressure. There's a bit of a tickle war happening in the center of the point. Both the Winstons having at it with the electric cannons. And that Stand 1 falling very, very low eventually is going to be brought down there. And the kills are just going to start tumbling. Not a winnable fight anymore for the Boston Uprising. First team fight going away at the Gladiators, so in control of the points.
First pick there onto I'm37. Keep an eye on the Reapers. If they die early on in the fight, that is disastrous for their team. They're a major source of damage, and where the Reaper is positioned dictates how much damage the team can really do in a fight. It's difficult. You might think they've got the Wraithform, they should be able to survive forever, but there's a lot of burst damage when it comes to these comps, especially when Coalescence is online, like we're going to see in this team fight.
Yeah, Coalescences are traded out as both teams don't want to be giving up this advantage, just operating purely on the ultimates. Now you can see a lot of the self-destructs coming through from that duplicate. Kevster tries to get a bit of value. They forced Gladiators and split them up into two, and that's Birdring forced out of the fight. Kevster going to be getting the remech in close quarters, not getting too much damage done, but it's a ton of work now as he manages to force out I'm37, push him out of place. Still an even fight. I believe the Boston Uprising are looking for opportunities to come back into this one, especially with Space and Moth getting caught.
It looked good for a moment there for the Gladiators, but just that first pick ends up being too much for them. It's the self-destruct that comes out of Gibulsi that really just splits apart the Gladiators and allows for that pick on Birdring. Again, Birdring weak, forced to use his Wraithform and disengage, and the Gladiators need to back off at the same time as he does. Instead, they try and contest the point, because remember, they're just flooding bodies in here to keep the time ticking, and they get 64% on the clock before Boston get their first ticks on board.
Yeah, and this, I don't blame you if you're at home and you're watching these teams, this mash of colors appear before your very eyes as well, but it is all about forcing out the cooldowns. Yeah, it is. But it's so important to force out the defensive cooldowns. As you can see, I'm37 already using the Wraithform there. Death Blossom actually being operated along with the Coalescence traded from both these teams. Birdring was to go in of his own, but boom to the side in the defense matrix, eating up a ton of that damage. Stand 1 now really trying to seal the deal here, using this Primal Rage, just trying to catch out Moth. He's going to be returning with the rest of his team here. They're still trying to win out this fight. The Sound Barrier committed to give them a bit of extra health. That self-destruct onto the point is going to be forcing them all the way back. Shu is in trouble here, and they force him out. He didn't have the fade to escape from that one. So Boston in prime position now to just get even further ahead in this round.
They did force the duplicate out of Valentine, so that's not too bad. And if we're taking a look at the support ultimate scenarios as well, both teams traded Sound Barrier in the middle of this engagement. Here we go, Boston pressing forwards. These are the kind of plays that ended up biting them when they played against Paris. And Gibulsi, he is so close to getting demeched there, but ends up... No, he's been demeched. Yeah, that is a big problem for them in this fight.
Coalescence is forced out very early on from Myeonbong, but Gibulsi bursted down. Shu with the later Coalescence is way better in the Death Blossom. That is absolutely going to be putting a close on things. Gladiator is going to be flipping this point over into their favor. Had to use the duplicate at the tail end of that fight, actually, so Kevster's not going to be having that coming into the next one. But at least they have control of the point.
But Brent, once again, it's that aggression, the over-aggression from the Boston Uprising. They're trying to punish the people retreating from the fight, which is a good idea, but the execution is just too sloppy. We saw them fail at that against Paris as well. That's how they lost the 5th map.
Space is going to be just waiting for the right time to use this self-destruct as well. You can see him just holding at this choke point. The initiation comes through. Stand 1 actually getting booted back, and now the self-destruct gets sent straight up into the air. Boston, with that Sound Barrier, they can't really push forward with the advantage that they got from the extra health. Birdring using the Death Blossom, but he's bursted down. A lot of that damage was ate up, and now Muse is trying to close things out. It's going to be the Primal Rage used on either side. Both Winstons really trying to make a lot of work happen. Valentine duplicating over to the Lucio. I don't think that was intentional, but he's going to make the best of it. Sound Barrier is online, and now Boston Uprising are nice and healthy, flipping this point back over. It actually did give them the slight edge they needed.
It did. It saved them in that fight, but the big player was Myeonbong. He gets up to his Coalescence much earlier than Shu, and Shu now has an opportunity to respond. They have a Coalescence, no defensive ultimates available for Boston. Unless Gibulsi pulls an enormous self-destruct out, this one really should go the way of the Gladiators.
Yeah, it's so hard to play into the Coalescence. The damage comes through. That's a good self-destruct. You see how far back Shu had to play. He's just trying to beam down the opposition. They mitigated a ton of the damage, and look at that. Kevster taken out of the duplicate immediately. Boston They have an in here. See if they're able to take it now. Still trying to push them away from this choke. Kevster, he's gone. The sticky bombs are out of there. And Stan1, again, cleaving through the opposition. Gladiators only with a couple of players left standing. And now, because the fight's gone on so long, the double support outs are online. Coalescence just to try and beam down the rest of the Gladiators who are left standing. Just trying to tickle this point over. But it is looking disastrous for them as the overtime will eventually fade down to nothing. Round number 1 goes the way of the Boston Uprising.
The Gladiators had a clear win condition there. They were pushing in with a Coalescence that, okay, the Cole got zoned by the self-destruct, so great play by Gibbelsy. Shu does not have his fade, so he can't play aggressively into that. But Bren, the crucial element was that Kevster duplicated Faith. There were 2 Lucios on the board for the Gladiators, and that just is not an effective way of being able to close out team fights. Kevster is looking for a duplicate onto Gibbelsy, or maybe I'm 37 as well, to be able to build up self-destructs and build up Death Blossoms. Those are the closers, the big ults that you need to be able to turn the fight in your advantage and take advantage of those slim timing opportunities. The Gladiators whiffed that one. They don't have too many more left. This is a round where Boston could get up to an early lead.
I'm winning that map 1. I mean, that would be absolutely massive. Considering everybody coming into this series, I think, expected the Gladiators to be the clear favorites. And again, we're going to see these mirror compositions, so both teams going to be trying to match each other. And you can tell
again,
a lot of this
the Gladiators.
Yeah.
The Gladiators are going for these outside positions, not trying to dominate the point, and then they're going for hard engages afterwards. Possibly with with Birdring teleporting in behind people as well. He didn't go for it this time, but that's definitely an option.
You can see Boston are just biding their time. They waited out and now looking to just try and re-engage. As you can see, Stan1 leaps in, the bubble laid down as well, creating a lot of position for them. Coalescence comes out, Myunbong getting a slightly later one, but the team is not down and out. Yeah, it's going to be the D-Mech down to Gibbelsy, and we're going to see a pause in the middle of the team fight.
Oof.
Ooh,
these
Shu
are frantic
scratching his
team
head.
fights to have a pause in the middle of as well. That's extremely disruptive. Nevertheless, I mean, it does seem so far on in the series. It's a tiny sample size at the moment, but both teams opting into this Reaper Echo. This might just be a thing that happens on Oasis because it's really good for these kind of compositions. Perhaps if we go to Garden, we might see a team opt into the Orisa comp as well. But I'm interested, Brent, as we extend throughout this series too. If the Gladiators end up getting to an early disadvantage in the mirror, how much do we see them flex into the Orisa compositions? We've got Anubis, Eichenwald, Dorado coming up as well. There are a lot of opportunities to opt into Orisa or long-range hit scanner, or both.
Yeah, there certainly are. And it is quite surprising to a degree as well when the desk was bringing up some of the Orisa usage of the Gladiators and seeing how much success that Paris had when they were playing these niche compositions, because it's one thing that the Boston Uprising, you were pointing out as well, Josh, how Boston, they try and do that thing that every good team does where they punish a lot of the stragglers and they have the discipline. A lot of the good teams, they have the discipline to try and really get a lot of those kills deep into the enemy's spawn and positioning.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of discipline to do that, and Boston were getting punished quite a lot. They were also struggling to kind of adapt to a lot of those different compositions, but the game is afoot here. You can see the teams. I mean, a team fight, there is no rest whatsoever. Sound barrier is going to be traded on either side just to keep them, again, nice and healthy. Kevster used the duplicate, and this is it. The Death Blossom actually going to be securing that D-Mech onto Valentine of all people. The remake comes through, but eventually taken out of it, and Stan1 just trying to disrupt with that Primal Rage. Look at the value that he's getting with it. 3 kills for him. And that is going to be, again, probably assisting the Boston Uprising in taking this one. Remember, on this particular control point, it is quite large, so the players can stall it out for long periods of time. But Boston Uprising with an early lead in this second round again.
A difference of Death Blossoms, in my opinion, Brent. Kevster went in and tried to get value out of his. He had duplicated the Reaper, and he got booped away by Faith. So, essentially no value for that big team fight finisher. On the other side, M37 did so much damage towards the end of that team fight that Stan1 just cleaned everyone up.
You see Birdring trying to lead the charge as well. He gets punished as well.
Good disengage.
That's a big disengage coming out from Boston, and they force out the Wraith form. It's an opportunity to try and burst down Birdring, but not with the Coalescence back behind him. A lot of that healing coming through to assist, and that's Stan1 taken down. Myunbong ends up opting to use his own Coalescence, but taken out of it, battered into the corner, now to self-destruct as well to push the Gladiators away. They're going to be sending in the second one as well. Valentine, don't forget it, the recall on the mech! It takes out Morph. Way too much burst damage. They just cannot withstand it, and the Gladiators, they're going to be falling again. 50% in counting here for Boston.
I really like that play from the Boston Uprising. They retreat and absorb so much of that aggression coming out from the Gladiators, who swarmed across the point with an early coalescence. And Myungbong replied with his own. Even though they lost Stand1 early in the fight, they had much better positioning because they baited in the Gladiators and they could hit them with double support ultimates, getting huge value out of a sound barrier. Sound barriers are surprisingly difficult to get value out of in this meta because teams can disengage and kite with their speed boost. And now Moth's trying to push in with his own. Let's see how Boston react to this.
That's a lot of burst damage. I'm 37 again, has to back off. Has no Ray form. Death Blossom is used defensively here just to try and put some pressure when the Gladiators were diving straight into the Boston Uprising. The point is going to be just wrangled away just like that. And again, good disengage from the Boston Uprising. They realized that they were losing that team fight. They don't lose anybody else off the back of it.
Yeah, they lost a single player, which forced them to give up the point, and they weren't able to recontest quickly, but it is still pretty decent overall, and they can come back in with double support ultimates here. That's a hard engage, but the Gladiators have caught them off! What an amazing play! They waited for I'm37 to go for the teleport, and that was their go signal. In with the Death Blossom, in with the Coalescence, and the Boston Uprising are wiped off the face of the earth. Myungbong now is considering a swap as well. What's going on here? He's going to...
That was...
All right, he's just changing around his heroes in spawn. That would be really unusual if Myungbong picked up an Ana or a BAP at this point.
Certainly would. That kind of initiative is what the Gladiators are going to need to show against the Boston Uprising. This team is... You can't really sleep on them. They're well versed in this kind of composition. Now, all eyes on Stand1 with this Primal Rage. We're just holding on to it now until he gets bursted. Look at this. It's a self-destruct coming out on absolute carpet bombing. Happening out. Everybody has to scatter for the indoors. Stand1 is just gearing himself up to maybe leaf in, but look at that. Faith goes down and Valentine follows as well. Gladiators are still in control of this one, and it feels like they're really not being pressured that hard.
The double tank ultimates there for the Gladiators stopped Faith's sound barrier from getting any value. That's what we're talking about when it's the push and pull of positioning. These compositions are so obvious when they engage. If you're tracking the speed boost cooldown or you're just looking at the other team as well, you can see when they use big mobility abilities to be able to engage, and that can give you an immediate key of when to use defensive abilities like the Primal Rage, like the Self-Destruct, to stop them in their tracks.
Oh my goodness, it feels like Kev's had just got the duplicate. He's got another one. Self-destruct laid down into the back line, and look at it. Boston, they've got their backs to the wall. How are they going to be getting out of this one? Coalescence is forced out of Myungbong to try and keep their team in it. And now Stand1 has to use that Primal Rage. Coalescence actually does get a lot of work done. Moth ends up going down. I think he died with the sound barrier. That could have kept the Gladiators into this one. Josh, that could just be the map.
Yeah, that's enormous. 88%. The Gladiators are going to be trying to come back in without any support ultimates, only with Birdring. If they can go for some kind of hardcore engage, then maybe, but who would even touch the point? Moth is late back into this one. He's looking... Okay, so Moth and Space are both on the objective right now, but Moth, he's at risk of being taken down. He's the first pick.
Taken down. And Space, half HP. He's not going to be getting healed up too quickly. The overtime just tickling. Gladiators desperately trying to hold on to just any sort of semblance of this round to try and stay in this map. Stand1 as well, just tickling away. The Death Blossom laid into the back line. Birdring, though, he's bursted through it. He can't believe it. His shock just on his face. And the Boston Uprising. 3 kills for them. Shu dying with the Coalescence. Not going to have it now for this upcoming team fight. Valentine with a duplicate as well, laying down again another self-destruct. And is pushing Gladiators really to the brink, and no one is going to be able to touch that point. The Boston Uprising taking map number 1 in 2 rounds. What a ridiculous showcase there from this team that, honestly, everybody had the lowest of expectations coming into this series for.
They're definitely the underdogs, but they have shown an ability to be able to perform against the Gladiators in the mirror, and this changes the tide of this fight, because as we go into later and later maps, now the Gladiators are going to be thinking, okay, we might be on a bit of a back foot if we're playing this mirrored composition right now. And Bren, I just keep thinking back to Moth dying with that sound barrier. If he'd been able to get it off, I feel like the entire tide of this map changes in their favor.
Yeah, so much revolves around these tiny, tiny mistakes that just might get punished, but we're going to find out on the other side of things if the Gladiators can battle back into this series, or is it the Boston Uprising who are walking away with just another map under their belts? We'll find out soon enough. Don't go anywhere.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile. And by Indeed. We help people get jobs. The Overwatch League is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League, and by IBM, the official cloud and AI partner of the Overwatch League.
Welcome back from the break, everybody, and yes, heading into our Indeed player resume, we're taking a look at Shu, the big dog himself. 2020 All-Star, 2020 Summer Showdown champion. Absolutely legendary credentials. I was thinking of the word then, I got stuck for a moment. Credentials is what they're called. Call it like a CV as well, maybe, Josh?
Yeah, curriculum vitae, I like it, but no, this is a player resume. And to me, Brent, going into Temple of Anubis, this guy could end up being key. We don't know yet whether the Gladiators are going to stick to the mirror match for the entire spate of all of our maps coming up. But heading into Anubis and then Eichenwald and maybe even Dorado, there are opportunities for Shu to play the Batiste and for them to opt into that 70% Orisa playtime that we saw the desk talking about. It's not as viable on Oasis. We didn't really expect to see it there as much. But heading later on in our series, it now becomes a serious strategic choice for the Gladiators. You lost map 1 to the mirror. Do you believe that you played poorly and you can do better on the later maps? Or is now the time for a change up in composition? What I'm essentially asking, Brent, is do they stick to the script? We don't know what the script was. We don't know whether the script said, whether the coaches said, we're going to play mirror the entire time, or whether they have specialist compositions for specialist maps. But I'm interested to kind of get a feel for it as the series progresses and see how confident the Gladiators are in just taking on Boston head-to-head.
Yes, absolutely. As we are heading into the map, it's the big question. I think I would like to see the Gladiators starting to play some unorthodox stuff. I say unorthodox, like not opting into this kind of mirror. We're going to see a pause as well as okay. Oh. I think that was I'm 37, but yeah, everyone's ready, so we're going to be heading into the game shortly afterwards anyway. But I want to see the Gladiators be running a lot of this stuff that's outside of the mirror. It's where we saw Boston, I think, getting the most uncomfortable in their series the other day. When they're forced to kind of adapt and as well think about how they're approaching these fights when they're not in the mirror. It's very obvious when you're playing the same comp against the opposition. You know exactly what the important points are, what your win conditions are, what you need to force out to win. But when you're playing against other stuff that's kind of designed and put together to try and stop you in your tracks, it becomes a lot more difficult. Or Boston are the ones who are just going to be showcasing something a little bit, not different, I want to say, because they were playing the double shield the other day, but it's going to be away from this Neo Goats that the desk has dubbed.
Yeah, and the Boston Uprising as well, in my opinion, looked better when they were playing that kind of Moira Lucio Reaper Echo composition. So yeah, their performances on this double shield have been a little more shaky, in my opinion. They often sub Punk in when they do that, so the fact they haven't opted for Punk to play Sigma here indicates to me probably that they want to remain flexible. They want to be able to play maybe that Neo Goats comp on attack as well, the Moira Lucio dive rush. And that's a good start for Valentine. He's got that damage boost and he just destroys Kevster immediately. That's one of the large advantages you have when you're running this composition. That Mercy damage boost is nasty when you play for the Echo.
You got to remember with this composition as well, it's something that Boston was struggling with actually the other day. Running into like the double shield and the spam and the long range. You take so much damage, you've got to get from point A to point B without taking any, or without losing any players, but it's so difficult. And look at this, the sticky bombs come through. It's going to be really important for Space to eat up as much of this damage as possible. So good defense matrix usage is going to be important.
Kevster's gone to Widowmaker now instead of Echo. He's looking for sightlines onto Valentine or Faith. If he can get a pick, that really opens things up. And instead, it's Stand 1 who dies immediately.
Yeah, they just roll over Stand 1. Maybe a boop was in operation there as well, possibly from Moth. We see Shu using his Coalescence as well. That's surely going to get this D-Mech onto Valentine. Southstroke comes through, blocked a lot of it, but that bubble that was laid down. Now we see this Gravitic Flux actually catches onto 2 targets, and it pushes Gabe Olsey onto the high ground, but unfortunately the Grasp cannot save you from Muse. It's going to be an early point A capture here. 5 minutes, 30 seconds roughly is what they're working with. And yeah, I love that adaptation that you were pointing out with Kevster on this Widow.
Yeah, but he didn't really do anything, honestly. I mean, they were just lacking the echo damage, and Kevster only built up to like 40% of his ult. So it's not like Kevster was popping heads, doing a ton of damage in the fight. Boston just kind of rolled over against a composition that didn't even have Echo and Reaper working together to take out the tank. Stanwon died far too early there, and that worries me, because the more we trend towards Orisa in the series, the less confidence I have in Boston. Look at this from Birdring. He's in so deep.
Ooh. Yep, he's managed to catch them off guard. The Immortality Field is forced out, and he's forced as well Faith to just dive back to save the rest of his team. The Res are going to come up here, so Stanwon is back into the fight. It's going to mean the Supercharger is used, but Birdring again dealing with that pretty easily. He's just being an absolute nuisance on the sidelines here, and now the Coalescence is really going to layer into them. Too much damage to overcome there. The tank line just going to be falling over. The Gladiators, I mean, they're on an absolute tear.
They certainly are. They know exactly how to disassemble this Orisa comp that's come out from
Oh
Boston
my
Uprising.
goodness.
They're destroying, and a lot of that is Birdring, because he is providing distraction and creating timings to pincer the Boston Uprising as they try and play a composition that just wants to face forwards. They put their Supercharger into the Dark Room, just assuming that they're going to be taking fights onto the point. I'm 37 moved over from playing Ashe, where he coach gunned away Birdring and stopped a little bit of that aggression, to the McCree. He got a flashbang on Birdring, but it doesn't matter, man. You don't have the ability to stand in place and fight against the Gladiators composition. If the timing and coordination is good, this Reaper Echo comp can break down most of what these Orisa defenses have to offer. That's a stonker of a time back, 4:30.
Certainly is, yeah. And just when we were, I suppose, a little bit worried for the Gladiators coming into this one as well, looking like maybe they just couldn't quite hang. But yeah, it turns out the Boston Uprising, opting into that Orisa, kind of gave them the win they needed. His Shu in the final moments. Is this just a skill orb? Yep, just sends it in. Holds down the right click. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You'll be seeing that a lot, I think, over the course of the June Joust.
You definitely will. Also, surprisingly good at attacking Echoes in the air. I've been noticing a lot of D.Va and Moiras teaming up to try and finish off Echoes who are weak in the air, because most of the time Echoes in these kind of comps are going to be within grasp distance. So a really strange interaction there that you can sometimes see Moira players going on the offensive, or rather helping to defend their team by going for those kind of finishing blows.
Very interesting composition here for the D.Va and the Orisa. And Boston second guessing themselves. They're looking like they might want to swap, or they're just waiting for a couple of the cooldowns to come online, getting the heals off.
Well, they're going for Reaper McCree here. So they have the flashbang, they have Halt, they have the Brigitte shield bash as well. So a lot of options for trying to deal with Muse if he engages. But the problem is just getting into position, because the Gladiators can tickle you and do a lot of damage at close choke points. So I'm interested to see how the Gladiators respond to this. They've given Boston a lot of space, though, but they're looking to set up for the dive. Look at Muse's position. He's got behind them already. And here he comes.
Yep. There's a dive, the bubble to try and separate the back line. Boston, though, holding strong. Remember, this composition that they're playing has got a lot of staying power, a ton of heals and damage mitigation, but not against that kind of burst. Space comes in with the missiles, and Birdring from on high, layering into them once more. That damage, now the beam comes off onto the side. Okay, this is looking turnable now for the Boston Uprising. Overstaying their welcome ever so slightly. The tank line just gets rolled over here. And Boston, it's something they've been quite effective at when they were playing this mirror comp. Kind of the process of absorbing a lot of the aggression coming their way. They definitely know how to try and make the scenarios when the Gladiators are taking the initiative more winnable for them, I suppose.
Both teams trying to bait the other in there. The Gladiators gave them market control and then tried to dive on top of them. And Boston Uprising backed off into the Mega Room. Both teams, I think, Brent, the best way to describe the June Joust meta, this is a peel meta. The teams that are going aggressive are not always the teams that are getting value. It's more like you want to bait the other team into overextending and then punish them. That applies to the mirror as well as it does the counter here, too. Boston are really trying to kind of bait the Gladiators into overextending and then punishing them with a ton of CC.
Muse is coming up close now to this Primal Rage. Again, just trying to avoid a lot of that damage coming through. The Halt, he yoinked him around the corner. 97% and counting. Yeah, Space just about getting out of there. Valentine, though, pressing forward to the rest of his team, and that's going to be the Coalescence used by Shu to try and give this team an advantage. Duplicate as well. Kevster immediately taken out of the mech. That was the Deadeye committed there from Ein37 to allow it to happen. Kevster also taken out of the duplicate form from it. And it is just this kind of staggered attempt at a defense now. The sound barrier being used by Gladiators means that they've got a little bit of an advantage, and now they're going to be jumping on it. Myungbong is going to be falling, pressing past the amplification matrix that was laid down by Boston. They're going to be able to collect a couple of these kills, but they need to be careful. Still have a lot of burst damage, but eventually with Valentine gone, not too much to worry about here.
Gladiators doing a good job there of shutting down Boston without overextending into them as well. You can see the positioning of Boston when they push through. They're not trying to bully their way all the way to the point and set up there. They're trying to poke through the choke point and bait the Gladiators into collapsing on them and then backing up so that they have a favorable engagement. The idea is to bait the abilities out of the Gladiators and then punish them with CC. It didn't quite work that time. But Faith close to a rally is going to give them a lot more sustain if the Gladiators try and do that same thing again. However, there is a Coalescence and a Duplicate to try and burn through it. Double Death Blossom here for the Gladiators could be devastating.
What's way too much burst damage. The flashbang into the default just shots coming out from Valentine. And now with that supercharger down as well, Gladiators, they have to back off around this corner. The Coalescence comes through from Shu, and that's going to give them team a bit of heals now. The Gladiators going to look to try and operate off of that. Look at that, Birdering into the backline of Death Blossom, just to try and close this one out. As well as that gets some default shots in as well onto Valentine. 3-piece for him, looking for the 4th, will get it in the end. And a bit of a stagger onto Gabe Olsey. I think the Gladiators can be pleased that they just managed to temper that ever so slightly, enough for the team to get back into it.
I'm amazed that Boston only got a single take off of that. What a play from Birdring. Let's take a look at this replay as well. I want to understand how he navigated the shield bash and the boops. Oh, it's just all the rest of his team providing that distraction. And Muse and Space jump in at the same time to boot people into him.
Yeah, I mean, it was the boop onto Faith, so Faith was like, I got a shield bash to get back to the rest of my team. Didn't have it for the Death Blossom there.
So well coordinated by Gladiators.
Absolutely, yeah. And now we're seeing the Boston Uprising obviously trying to get into the point. They have a lot of ultimates is what they're working with. Myungbong has this Coalescence, which is going to be a major win con for them. Deadeye as well to just try and clear the space out. It's going to force the positioning. And it's going to push the Gladiators into all these different corners. Maybe they can start to get a bit of value out of the Coalescence, but no. The Gladiators, they wait it out perfectly. Moth leads it in with this sound barrier once more. And Space and Kevster both on the Diva, pulling out these self-destructs, eventually going to get taken out of it, but the damage is already done. The self-destructs have been unleashed along with the Coalescence from the Gladiators this time, and it's enough damage to try and clear out the Boston Uprising, leaving them now with just 1 minute 40 seconds to work with.
I love how Space gets a remake kill there on Myungbong, and it's not even notable particularly. We've seen so many of them happen that it's like, oh yeah, that happened again. He got flattened like a pancake. Sure, that's a common occurrence now in this meta. 1 minute and 27 seconds for the Boston Uprising, and their plan is not working. The Gladiators are too smart. The way that they're playing angles, the way that they just LOS that Deadeye as it came in from Ein37 and then collapsed back upon the Boston Uprising, they know exactly what their win conditions are and how to play around them. I've got another look at Birdring here. While he's on the flank, he's just too good. He's just too sneaky.
I could feel it happening as well. And they realized what their win condition was. Again, taking the early team fights, the initiative by the Gladiators to just dive into them before they got into the dark room, and allows Birdering as well, when they all get corralled and split apart by the rest of the Gladiators, it just gives him a freebie with the Death Blossom. It's beautiful from the Gladiators, and this is where you see the differences of these teams. Boston was struggling with their adapting against Paris the other day. The Gladiators, they're a well-versed team. They've been around the block. They know how to play and adapt on the fly.
Yeah, this series is nowhere near over though, right? Even if they're able to lock this map up, it's still only at 1-1. And they still have to hold off this final attack, pushing with a supercharger, double support ultimates as well. Muse, he was chain CC'd. He didn't get to play the video game.
He didn't get to play the video game. Oh, no, no, no. We've seen it so often, but here we have it. The Boston Uprising, again, rolling over them. 10 seconds remaining. Going to be looking now to Gladiators, trying desperately to stall this out into the overtime. The soundbar will definitely give them enough health to survive for the moment. And now we're going to be seeing it. Boston Uprising just trying to close out this fight, but with Ein37 gone, the punch into the sideline. It's way too much damage. The stall heroes are coming out. The self-destruct into the back. That seismic slam into the punch. Kevster trying to hunt down the kill. He's got to be careful, but eventually Valentine will fall. And look at the mechanics on that one. Kevster just doing the dirty work in the final moments. And that is going to be the map. The Gladiators bouncing back, taking map number 2 and bringing the series to 1-1.
That is pretty phenomenal stuff. The Gladiators respond back with a statement map there on Anubis. It's not the narrative that we set up, with the Gladiators shifting over to play Orisa. In fact, it's the other way around. Boston tried it, and the Gladiators understood exactly how to break it down. Birdring, for me, being the player of that map in particular, because the flanks he was able to find, and the value from the Death Blossom, the way that the rest of his team set him up to go on those unnoticed flanking routes and get huge value. All really good stuff from the Gladiators, but even that titanic effort to put them massively ahead on Anubis, it only draws the series level at 1-1. Boston are by no means out of this yet.
Absolutely. Series must go on, obviously, and the Boston Uprising looking for opportunities to try and get that extra lead. We're going to see how far this series really goes on the other side of this break. Maybe some more heroics from Birdring like you're seeing on your screens right here, possibly lined up for the future. We'll see you in just a few.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile. And by State Farm. For auto, home or renters insurance, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Grooves. So much flavor, it's a mind crunch. TeamSpeak, the official voice supplier of the Overwatch League. And by NetApp, the official data management partner of the Overwatch League.
Well, we've loved seeing your awesome artistic creations this season on the Fan Art Gallery by Coca-Cola. And this week, we want you to submit your favorite Overwatch League player enjoying a cold Coca-Cola beverage for a chance to be featured on the gallery. So submit your art over at overwatchleague.com/art-gallery for your chance to be featured. There you go. Send it all in. And I believe Josh is also having some technical difficulties, so unfortunately, you're all stuck with my omniscient voice. You're not back. You're not back.
I am
no,
back.
They want to listen to me. Okay.
No, they don't. They don't. Well, maybe they do, but I think they want to listen to both of us anyway. You can take us through this.
Sure. Yeah, the power rankings of IBM Watson. I'm glad you know what a segue, Josh. Here, Space and Muse. 10 and 11th in the standings. And remember, with the way that this is working, 100 points is roughly average. So these guys operating above average off the back of their recent performances, jumping up so many spaces. Look at that. What is that? 15 places for Space, 17 for Muse.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. But that is part of the evolution of the Gladiators story here in 2021. They started out with a bit of an underwhelming beginning. There was a bit of a flop at the beginning of the season. They recovered it slightly, and now in the June Joust, they're doing a lot. They could even end up being undefeated across this stage, which would be a massive rebound for this team coming out, and would obviously lock them into the June Joust play-ins. They would if they even won this match.
And we're heading into Eichenwalde. You can see our map leaderboard presented by Xfinity. And yeah, the last time Uprising had some success, 2018 versus the Valiant, quite some time ago. Speaking of 2018 as well with the Uprising, it's been a while, but this would be honestly one of the few performances or at least appearances in any sort of like qualification kind of tournament-esque where something's on the line, I suppose, is the way I'm trying to word this, because the Boston Uprising is a team that they haven't really been performing over the last few years. In fact, the last time I can remember them being a real dominant force was Stage 3 2018. They're looking to turn that around by winning this series today and guaranteeing that they get to play in the knockouts this Sunday.
Yeah, they did actually sneak into the playoffs when it came to Stage 1 of 2019, and then they immediately lost. So that isn't quite the kind of thing that the Boston Uprising fans want replicated again. But honestly, Brent, to be in any kind of stage playoff would be helpful for the Boston Uprising fans. They've been waiting at this point at least 2 years for their team to do anything when it comes to these big playoff games that happen in our season, the elimination games. And this would be one step closer. They're 1-1 in the series so far, and they've got an opportunity here to respond well. The Gladiators are running this Orisa Sigma composition on defense here, so the Boston Uprising have their choice of composition to try and break it down. They've opted for that Lucio, Moira, Reaper, Echo, Rush kind of style.
The other day, Boston, they struggled to find the windows of opportunity to strike when they were running this composition against the Orisa. We'll see if they can do better this time around. It definitely have come into this with a lot of prep, though, but Gablesi so close to getting demeched. Almost bursted down. Faith, I believe, trying to save him, gets taken out. They're trying to wrap around the corners here. The Raveform Force from I'm37, he's not going to be able to escape from that much damage, and that's going to be a very early team fight win here for the Gladiators, and it set them up, Josh, now to be really rolling with the ult economy. Shoot close to this Amp Matrix.
Definitely. I think that Boston have missed a trick. When they play against these Orisa comps, they're not teleporting I'm37 into the backline. And that is what he needs to do. You need to set up somebody coming in on a flank so that you can all go at once. We talk about how much sustainability Boston Uprising's composition has, not against the burst damage coming out from the Gladiators. So you need to finish the fight really quickly.
Okay, you can see, look at that pressure that's being applied. Shu just about getting that Immortality field off. The Amp Matrix as well, the Burrowing's gone. Is it going to be enough? Stand 1 disrupting all of them with this Primal as well. And that was all due to Myeonbong as well, coming in with that Coalescence, just leading it for his team, keeping him nice and healthy. Now you can see the kills all pretty much going away. Kevster obviously duplicating up onto the D.Va, is going to be taken out of that form momentarily and sent straight back to the respawn queue. So the Boston Uprising finding their footing.
Yeah, really good engage from Boston because they managed to speed boost and Coalescence and get the Gladiators retreating into a position where they had a wall at their back. Anytime you have a wall at your back against this Neo Goats composition, it is really difficult because you want to keep disengaging and get away from them. It's a very short range comp. If you can put distance between yourself and your opponents, you've got the advantage with that McCree, with the Batiste, with the spam damage from the Sigma. But when there's a wall at your back, you can't go any further back.
All about the positioning. It's really what these compositions try and come down to. And you can see that burst damage coming out onto Valentine. It forces the duplicate to be used. He's going to be moving up, and Shu taken out on high. Birdering coming from the back with the Deadeye, trying to turn things around, clutch it up for his team. Stand1 goes down, but is it going to be enough? We've still got to deal with Valentine. Not out of that duplicate form yet. Lays down the shield just to mitigate that damage, and it gives his team a bit of presence here. Flashbang just going to be missing. The shots, though, not quite. Birdering landing almost every single one of them. Difficult to hit as well. And as all of this was going on, Space just buying time for his team on the point. The Immortality Field will keep him alive for just a moment, but not long enough. Boston eventually piercing through this defense. They're going to be able to push this card just underneath this arch.
Yeah, Space has now taken the opportunity to move over to D.Va as well, which will give him more opportunities to eat up the stickies, the damage coming out from I'm37, boop Stand1 back in the air as well, and provide a little more stopping power to those Winston engages, and it still allows him to play on the objective. Here we go, peeling for the backline, but Birdring, he's already fallen.
Yeah, that's a deep engage coming out from the Boston Uprising. I'm37 almost chunked down there. I think that was a quick shot to the head. But he gets the better of Kevster in the end in the offside flank angles. Now the amplification matrix is going to be dropped down. Gladiators are going to be using this to try and turn this fight around when it was looking so good for Boston. Stopped in the end.
Good first pick onto Birdring, but there's the power of Space going onto D.Va. In his first fight, he's now built up a self-destruct. He was doing extraordinary damage to Stand1, managed to finish him off. I'm37 pressured straight afterwards, and then through that Amp Matrix was able to demeg Givenchy as well. Those are the kind of players that you need the D.Va for, to be able to peel for the rest of your team and take them out. Like I said earlier, it's a peel meta right now. You've got to be able to keep your team alive and sustained, and then disengage a little bit to the effective distance that your composition wants to play in.
The Halt gets sent out just to pull them back. You can see the Coalescence is used. That means Space uses the self-destruct. It's almost a flowchart of plays coming out. Birdring from the back line as well. The Deadeye combos beautifully into it. They all just fell directly into his line of sight. That is going to end the team fight as soon as it started. And this is the thing that I was highlighting so often, Josh. The Gladiators so good at understanding what do the Boston Uprising have? What is their win condition? What do we have? How do we counter it? And you can just see the plays just happening before our very eyes.
Definitely. In this next engagement, it's all about the Supercharger and the Death Blossom. Boston need to go quickly before those ults are online, and instead, it's Valentine who falls first.
Kevster duplicating over now to the Reaper, just looking to pump out that damage. Obviously builds up the Death Blossom really quickly. Oh, actually, I've made a mistake there. He actually is playing Reaper for real.
No, Kevster's like straight up just chasing Stand1 with his teleport. That's a little goofy. You don't really have the ability to try and go for that, but no punish, so no problem. And now the Gladiators, they have Amp Matrix and Supercharger, a huge amount of damage. Boston Uprising are going to have to go so fast with their Coalescence to try and overcome this damage difference that's going to be set up for the Gladiators. Boston need to be on top of them before those ults are popped.
60 seconds.
With a minute left, the pressure is on. Stand1 just trying to break down that Supercharger. It goes down straight away, but I'm37. And look at that Birdering just pumping in the damage, putting in the good work. It's a self-destructing Coalescence, though. That might even things out. Kevster and Muse are removed from the fight, but look at that play. The Amp Matrix and the Flashbang just to lock up the targets in time. Valentine with the fadeaway beam will bring down Birdering, but not before paying with his own life. 30 seconds now left. Josh and the Boston Uprising really just trying to clutch at anything to try and push this over the mark. But remember, if they win this team fight, the card is nowhere near to the checkpoint.
Not even close. There's going to be at least 2 team fights here for Boston to take checkpoint B. So they need to win this one and then punish and gain some momentum. Start picking up the stragglers. First step first, though, they need to actually win.
That is a great punish, honestly, from the Boston Uprising. I thought that Flashbang was going to get an immense amount of work done. Managed to lock up a couple of the players, but not before going down eventually. Now you can see Stand1 just waiting it out. Falling quite low, but that self-destruct from Space, that might just turn things around for them. I'm37 gone out of the fight. It's going to remove a significant portion of the damage, and now, as the overtime gets going, only a couple of players left standing for the Boston Uprising, and unfortunately, unable to do so against that Amp Matrix that was laid down into the back. The overtime will eventually go down, and Boston only able to get 105 meters of progress.
The storyline of this game so far, to me, Bren, is that Boston Uprising won the first map when it was a mirror. Outside of that, there have been no mirror fights. Boston was playing Orisa with Gladiators on the rush for when it came to Anubis, and now that we've seen the first half of Eichenwald, it's flipped the other way around. Boston trying to play the rush, Gladiators on the Orisa. But when it's a non-mirror battle, Gladiators seem to understand these compositions and how they play into each other much better. They're able to set up plans more effectively, they're able to disengage more effectively, and stop the momentum of the other team, no matter what the situation is. That is a real key to me. So far, the only success we've seen from Boston was those tight first wins when it came to Oasis playing the mirror comp. They need to try and force Gladiators back into that straight-up duel.
Absolutely. And they're going to be looking to try and do that, but unfortunately, how do you do that when it feels like the Gladiators have almost realized it themselves? In between the break of map 1 and map 2, we can see here Space is the guy we're all watching, and I mean, Josh, you pointed out the amount of damage he's putting out, but these guys clearly have come into this with an understanding of like, okay, what do we need to do here? Look at the amount of damage he's going to be doing as well through that Amp Matrix. It is absurd.
It is, yeah. Absolutely ludicrous. Alright, let's see what compositions people are going for here. The double sniper, probably just a scout and see if they can find an individual kill. It was very close. Now Kevster and Birdring go back to spawn. The Torbjorn!
Wait a second.
Okay, I love this. It gives you so much sustainability against what Boston Uprising are going for here. Boston have short-range engages, so you don't want to be playing long-range characters like the McCree or the Ashe, that kind of stuff. You want people that can crawl in the middle of a team fight, like a Reaper or a Tor.
Yeah. Pop the Overload, you get all that extra armor, the extra health, or the extra firing speed. Just letting it loose now. You can see him just running all the way in. And that's doing way too much work. Boston just cannot withstand it in the slightest. There we go. Have another go at it.
Yeah. Stay out of my way. That is a really nice adaptation from the Los Angeles Gladiators. They understood how Boston wanted to play, they counterpick them, and Boston fall into the trap. It's hard there. Boston needed to adjust and try and bait out the abilities from Kevster so that he's not as tanky as he would be when they take that first engagement. But instead, they're a little slow on the trigger. Obviously, Gladiators with a better idea of what they want to do. And now, here we go again. They're pushing back in, but without any ultimates. The only thing they have is the Primal from Stand 1.
Well, it ends up working out. They actually combo a ton of that damage. The Amp Matrix is still up, though, which means they're going to be taking a ton of damage. They need to try and remove them away from this positioning. Force them around. Birdring has to go back into the previous spawn door here. Boston has succeeded at least in what they were aiming to do. Oh, good. As I say that, okay, Stand 1 just making it a little bit too sketch there, but it's going to get out. They managed to stop the team fight at the spawn door, but unfortunately only stops them for about 30 seconds before they all start getting the respawns back up. Boston, no, not letting up in the slightest. The Coalescence is used. Kevster, the Molten Core, it's going to be stopping them from really pushing and playing into them through this choke point. Self-destruct doesn't get too much as well, pushing them around the corner. Boston trying to still take this fight even further beyond now with a sound barrier, but not enough to keep Valentine alive.
Boston are trying. They're definitely taking a lot of team fights, which is going to take time off the clock. But none of these have been successful. When Boston initiate, the Gladiators are using that opportunity to pop their ultimates, to take a step backwards, create some distance between them and the Boston Uprising, and just absorb all of that aggression. Boston need to be really well set up. I want to see teleports into the backline from M37, a distraction so he can get off a big Death Blossom. And instead, it's sneaky, sneaky Birdring again.
Yeah, he's been so massive on these flanks, but Boston want to be taking the initiative fast here. Trying to dive straight into them. Can't moving forward. M37 using a Death Blossom. He's going to be missing that one, but he's still here. Ready and waiting now, but taking out. Nobody's touching. They can't touch. There's too much lava on the floor. Oh my goodness. That is chaos incarnate in a final moment there. I mean, if there was anything to summarize the June joust thus far, I would just take that little snapshot of that last team fight, just to showcase
Absolutely.
what we're working with. I mean, look at, it's just
An
ridiculous.
amazing
It's just
fight
absolutely
happening
ridiculous.
in the tiniest little storage room of a
Yeah.
castle in Eichenwald. It's even thematically makes sense for our medieval theme in the June Joust. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing trailer. But Bren, also there, what was demonstrated by the Gladiators is that not only do they understand how to run the rush composition to break Orisa, they understand how to run the Orisa comps to break the rush. That Torbjorn adaptation is a lovely little curveball to throw at the Boston Uprising and edge their comp out ahead. We had a lot of questions about which composition would end up being better. I love the Torbjorn.
We're going to find out just how far the Gladiators are going to take it. Are they going to seal up and wrap up this series on the other side of the break, ladies and gentlemen? It's coming up just after this. Don't go anywhere.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Welcome back from the break, everybody. Yep, we're heading into the series Boston Uprising versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. As you can see, the Gladiators are they're taking a sweet time, not in their chairs just yet, but they're just they're just chilling because they're a map ahead in this series, Josh, and one map away from securing their position in the knockouts this upcoming Sunday.
It's win and in for both of these teams. Both had a pretty decent record in the Junjiao so far, but at the moment the Gladiators looking like the more likely team to secure that position for sure, Ren. An interesting substitution happening here as well, with Skewed coming into the lineup as we head into our next map, the Escort map. I like this move, but also it indicates quite clearly what kind of compositions they want to run. They're not running a Lucio, they're going to be running that the very solid backline with Skewed playing the Brigitte. It's what they've done, it's what Skewed specializes in. It makes them a little more readable, but with the map coming up being Dorado, it gives them more of an opportunity to actually play compositions that are good for the map.
Let's take a look at Shu's Moira statistics here. He might not be playing too much of the Moira. He might also be playing the Moira, which is pretty good at the moment. The Coalescence, also pretty good ultimate. You can see him 12 kills per 10 minutes of the Coalescence. And yeah, 22,000 healing done per 10 minutes. Not the highest that we've seen thus far, actually. I think we saw like 24,000 previously. So yeah, I mean, these are kind of rookie numbers, you know? Step it up, Shu.
I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? A Coalescence, by the way, every minute, too, which is just absurd, right? And this isn't even the most fast-paced match that we've seen so far. Because they're not playing the mirror against each other on every map, there's actually been moments where they're building their ultimates a little more slowly because they're not scrapping and engaging as often and having that constant back and forth. Like I said, though, we're heading into Dorado here, which is one of the maps where that Winston and Moira Lucio Reaper Echo composition isn't as good, Brent. We saw that in the Dallas game, where they really came up short without a long-range hit scan. I'm expecting Birdring to come out here on some form of long-range hit scan, Skewed to be playing the Brigitte, and then generally to be playing a bit more of a Mei Melee-esque composition on this map, which poses its own questions about how the Boston Uprising are going to respond in this series.
Especially because they've looked, I would say, more comfortable on the kind of rush composition. The Neo Goats that the desk has dubbed it. So yeah, it's going to open up a couple of questions, I think, for the Boston Uprising in terms of how they're going to be approaching playing on Dorado. Because like you said, Dorado, very long sight lines, very suitable for this long-range hit scan. Anticipating that the Gladiators are probably going to be playing into that one.
Yeah. What I'm interested in as well, and don't forget, everybody, it's knockouts this Sunday as well. When we get to our Sunday performances, the normal Sunday games this week, those are elimination games for the Junjiao's play-ins. Those are some big deal matches, and that's what both of these teams are playing for right now. If Gladiators win this map, they win the series, they book their tickets straight into those games.
5, 4, 3.
Pulling out all the stops. Kevster, he was teasing us a little bit there with the Widowmaker, but opting for the Echo in the end. And Birdring is indeed going to be
Widowmaker. Yeah, but this is going to be a really aggressive defense for Boston Uprising. You can tell just by the way that they're positioned here. And a lot of it revolves around being able to peel and then get good flanks off to punish Boston's aggression.
Yeah, Immortality Field laid down. Shu actually with the one who collects in the kill there on I'm37. Trading it with his life. Good sticky bombs there from Valentine, but not enough to get the kill. In fact, Kevster's just going to be coming in for revenge. Trying to layer in that damage. There's the beam. A nice early start here for the Gladiators.
And what Boston haven't quite understood, I think, with this rush comp against the Orisa, is that you need to be approaching from all angles. They're very one-dimensional with how they do it. They just rush in all from the front, instead of trying to have Valentine flank, or I'm37 flank, or even Stand 1 come from a different direction. It just makes it too easy for the Gladiators to back off into a safe area. Here they go again.
Kevster just took a ton of burst damage, has to back off around the corner. That is a wonderful punish. Valentine thought he was safe indoors. Actually going to get taken out. Space forces out the fade. It's a window of opportunity for them if they want to try and take out Myeongbong as he tries to corral into the corner. The Amp Matrix as well, pushing them all back. A ton of damage though. The Coalescence keeping their team alive. Boston still in this one, winning it out in the end as well with the superior healing.
Definitely. Here's a question though, Brent. Birdring over onto the Reaper, which means he's only effective after the Boston Uprising engage onto him. When we saw the San Francisco Shock play on this map, now albeit that wasn't with an Orisa composition, they were playing more of the Winston, but we saw Glister go on big rotations and get enormous value out of that long-range hit scan, because Boston their composition can only focus on one thing at once. That's what I thought we would be seeing here from Birdring, and instead he's just going for the
for the Destroy Stand 1 comp.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevster going to duplicate over to the D.Va. That's going to lay down one Self-Destruct. That might be 3 more to come in this team fight if we're lucky. Nice little fireworks display. Gabe Olsey falling very low. Has to back off around the corner. See the players just biding their time. The Gladiators obviously just trying to push past this choke point. It's quite difficult for them when the Boston Uprising are just outputting this much damage and applying this much pressure. Sticky Bombs again just going to be traded from either side. Coalescence burns down Kevster. That is a wonderful punish.
That is so well done as well because it destroys Shu's Amp Matrix. Oh, but the overextension from I'm37. Boston, they're throwing themselves into the spawn again. If they end up getting punished, this could be disastrous for them. Myeonbong falls, but traded for Shu. It's anybody's game, but better spawners for the Gladiators as Boston's hubris may come back to bite them here.
Yep, again, Valentine forced to use his duplicate. And he's going to be building up that Self-Destruct very quickly, so it forces them back again around this corner. That may have just bought them enough time, at least for the Boston Uprising, to get back in and get this defense going. Once again, it looks like it has. Most members are already back in the action.
Scary, but a good stabilization from Boston. They don't have any big ultimates to be able to work with here, but on the other side, the Gladiators don't really either. It's only that defensive self-destruct that they have to be able to work with. And the time, it is ticking. Boston have done a great job so far at winning these team fights. And I've got to feel like the composition DPS-wise for the Gladiators just isn't as good as it could be.
Murdering again, trying to take these flank angles. He's got a lot of value in the pass from it, and he's putting in the work. His team obviously following up on a lot of what he's doing, just splitting the focus here of Boston. Self-Destruct are laid down by Space so we can get back into the mech. And that's going to be really curtains there for the Boston, at least trying to get this full hold on the go. So with only a couple of seconds left to spare, the Gladiators are going to get that cap and checkpoint A, and the Boston Uprising obviously thinking now, okay, how are we going to defend here on checkpoint B? Because it completely changes going from one side of the map to the other. Very long sightlines here, Josh.
Yeah, extraordinarily long sightlines, but nobody really to take that much advantage of it. Kevster's more of a mid-range kind of person. Here we go, though. Hard engage up over the top. Big opportunities there for a Death Blossom.
Force out the Immortality Field. It's one of the things that was going to stop this big ultimate. Wraith form to get into position, and there's the Death Blossom. Oh, a cleave straight through them. It's a wonderful answer to it. I'm37. The 4 pickoffs. Lovely jobber right there. Boston Uprising going to be quite pleased with that one.
They needed those 3 kills as well, though, Brent. Myeonbong died really early on without the Coalescence online. So they absolutely had to get I'm37 into a good position. Those kind of hard engages with the teleport into the backline are, I think, what Boston Uprising have been missing a little bit in the wider areas of the map. You need to create that threat from multiple angles so that the Gladiators don't just disengage. But here we go. Kevster now on long-range hit scan. It's not Bird Ring, but it comes down to how much value he can get. Only at 70% of his ult so far, but he has just made the swap.
When they take the fight in close quarters in the courthouse, of course that's going to be favoring Boston. With the Coalescence that was used a little bit prior, it's an easy team fight win for them. Yeah,
I love that. You're playing outside of LOS of Kevster the entire time, and you're not offering him these opportunities to get consistent damage or picks up onto you. Kevster has to be really mobile with his positioning to try and maneuver around so that he's always got a sightline onto Boston, onto those squishies, onto the tanks to be able to generate ult charge, generate damage and value in the fight.
Kevster now just trying to take progressively more and more aggressive angles, but that is the TP into the dive. The Boston Uprising with a wonderful approach, but Gladiators, they answer back just like that. Space's Self-Destruct did all the work, and Boston are really struggling here. Valentine's just trying to build up that supercharger, but he can't do it. Not when he's withstanding the Death Blossom. Indoors once more, Birdering, battling back. That is a great approach, and look at that cart just sailing right into the finish line there. Checkpoint B secured. And arguably, this is one of the more difficult areas that they had to try and push into. Now they're really just sailing into this final point. It does get a little bit better, I think, for the Boston Uprising's composition. There's a lot more close quarters. We'll see what they can do, Josh.
It only gets better if they win this engagement, though, and they're pushing into an Amp Matrix. The flank again for Birdring as well, and Faith, he's the first to fall.
Yeah, Faith tried to peel away. You can see the boot was there. And now they're just trying to deal with I'm37. The Coalescence keeping him up, though. So low. Eventually, the beatdown will be enough. But the Boston Uprising finding a ton of work. Kills come through. The Hulk going to be pulling them forwards. Another beatdown, a melee kill into Myeonbong. So a lot of that happen. A minute left now for the Gladiators on their approach. Going to be regrouping at the spawn.
That's a crucial team fight win for the Boston Uprising to get. It halts the momentum of the Gladiators, only a minute left on the clock, and it means that Boston can keep fighting around the choke points as well. They're trying to bait the Gladiators in, and then they'll go for a dive on top of them. They don't need to hold the choke right from the beginning, because their comp is a very... it's not necessarily fast, but it is very bursty. They need to get on top of you and finish the team fight quickly.
Kevster has Bob available. He's going to send it out immediately. Going to be, again, peppering them into the backline. The coach going to try and push away this dive attempt. With the sound barrier, it's way too much health. They can't really overcome it. But Boston, they have been chunked down. Gladiator's just going to be backing off now with this rally armor, seeing if they can try and win out this team fight. The Ray Form's used, but Birdring, I mean, that's way too much damage. The beam of Valentine is enough to take him out. Muse, meanwhile, I mean, he's been going on a little casual stroll, moving into the back line. He is going to be taken out here, most likely, as the rest of Boston realize what he was up to, but he almost went unchecked there for a second.
And that's one of the advantages, actually, of the Orisa-based compositions. The Winston comps always have to fight aggressively and hunt people down, whereas the Orisa comps can just sit on the payload a little more. Nevertheless, it's been a good defense from the Boston Uprising. They've rallied and got themselves back together in this map, and they managed to stop the Los Angeles Gladiators from rolling all the way to checkpoint C. That's there are still win conditions for sure, but for either team, this is the kind of performance that I think is expected in Dorado, where you go deep, but you're not quite able to complete the map. It's anybody's game at this point.
Absolutely. I think Boston might just be kicking themselves a little bit as well on the initial defense. There were a couple of turned around opportunities. Maybe they could have got that full hold against the Gladiators, turned it into a real winnable scenario here on Dorado, but was not to be. And yeah, winnable for either side, I think, summarizes this one up here, because this is the expected kind of performance you get out of Dorado. I'm curious now, the Gladiators, if they were running the Orisa comp on the attack, they're probably going to be opting into it on the defense, especially when Boston have struggled in the past trying to find those opportunities to attack into it.
I don't think you necessarily need to run the Orisa here, Bren, but it's the same theme of long-range hit scan and poke. It's more of the Mei melee compositions, right? So even though Muse here is on the Winston, they're not playing the Moira Lucio where they have to go for these fast engages into choke points, and they're relying on burst damage to bust open the defense. Instead of doing that, they're playing a slower paced composition. My problem with this comp that they're running is that Birdring is on Reaper. I don't think that this comp works well for them, because even though the Reaper is good at being able to shred stand 1, go toe-to-toe with I'm37, they don't have the poke damage. So their DPS want to fight at close range, but the rest of their team wants to slow down the engagement and disengage. It doesn't really make sense to me as a great composition to run here. I'd rather see Birdring playing the Ashe, for example.
We'll see what kind of value he can get, actually. He's on this roll. The dive attempt comes through. Boston right up onto the high ground. The bubble's traded out as well. No casualties. Shu's just going to be looking for these big Bionade opportunities as well to try and set up his team.
Absolutely.
They've also going to be trying to eat that one up.
That's
Dives in. Valentine goes down. There's the Bionade. Right as Gabe also turned his back, so probably going to get chunked down and demeched in the end. Yeah, that is what's going to happen. Stan1 does a good job of separating Shu, removing him from the fight, because Boston do have the better spawns, but the longer this team fight gets staggered out, the more likely it is that Shu just ends up waddling his way back from the spawn door anyway.
And remember what I said, it's a peel meta. So the Gladiators are trying to absorb this aggression coming out from the Boston Uprising and punish people who go too aggressive. That time the first kill was on Valentine, who I believe had been chunked down by Kevster and finished off. I think Muse was the final blow. But nevertheless, that is the intention here. Skewed and Shu need to be able to stay alive in these longer team fights as the Gladiators peel if they want to be able to get the win.
Get back in the fight.
Nano Boost is ready. Over Shu. Just biding his time. There we go. Eventually going to unleash it. And that's going to go on to Muse, actually, to try and push them away. Boston do not want to fight into this. Gabe Olsey's so low. Oh, he got the DMAC as well. And Muse, he can afford to go this deep because he's got the Primal Rage. Doesn't want to use it, but he will have to in the end. He's going to get bursted down by that Coalescence, and now just trying to batter Gabe Olsey so he can't get back into the mech. There's a lot of sticky bombs on him, though. Has to back off to the rest of his team. Muse falling very low. Won't go down, though, and the rally armor on top will just at least top him up for the time being.
And this is favorable for the Gladiators. They've slowed things down. I'm37 slept in the middle of this as well, but there's a big engage coming out here. Speed boost, Death Blossom about to come online, but that was a speed boost and a sound barrier deep into the back line.
Wow.
Yeah, that is beautiful from Birdring. Recognized exactly what he needed to do.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
huge
Yeah,
amount of
I mean-
ults invested there by Boston.
He's also completely proving me wrong. I didn't think this Reaper would be as valuable for them, because even though it is pretty good at being able to heal, you have a lot of sustain, that kind of thing, I thought the Boston Uprising would just end up playing the payload here and not have to worry about the threat of a long-range hit scan, and just wait for the Gladiators to initiate onto them. And instead, I think the Gladiators have realized that Boston only really have one dimension in which they like to play this comp, which is full-on aggro, in-your-face, diving you. They really lack some of the nuance to it that we've seen from teams like Dallas or Shock, or even Mayhem actually recently too. So this pick from Birdring is getting enormous value. They're just jumping straight into his shotguns.
If there's ever a team fight for Boston to win, though, it would be now with the Coalescence and the Death Blossom. Leading it in. That's a nano boost onto Birdring, but he almost gets brought down straight away. Un37 using the Death Blossom, and that was when the Gladiators just couldn't quite escape from it. And yeah, it does go their way eventually after they unleash all those ultimates, so they're just about going to be able to get this camp most likely. I don't think the Gladiators are going to recontest this, although they have been proven wrong in the past.
I don't think they could if they wanted to. There's nobody who's going to be able to get there in time. They're not running a Lucio. And,
I always give them
so
the benefit of the doubt, Josh, you know, just in case they start breaking the rules of the Overwatch League, hacking, just start speed hacking all the way to the car or something. I don't know.
Spin button over to the car.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
the
never
day we
know,
see
you never
that, I'll start to get very worried about the competitive integrity. Here we go. Still Birdring opting for the Reaper as well. I'm not quite a believer again, Bren, because Point B has so many long-range hit scan options. But all right, I'm willing to be completely proven wrong. He's done it so far. How does this engage really work? They've got the Primal and the Duplicate to work with here, but they just don't have the tools to contest the point, nor the long-range poke. So I'm not exactly sure how the Gladiators are going to tick time off the clock and win these engagements.
Bionic connects onto stand 1. Now they're trying to just slowly walk up to them, menacingly. Okay, almost got the Primal.
Well, they do push them away. It's a disengage just to stop Kevster from getting value out of his Duplicate. I'm assuming that's not going to catch anybody.
Yeah,
And Boston
most
can
likely
push
not.
back in here with double support ultimate. So even though Gladiators have two of their own, they're not as tanky, right? The Rally is very good at being able to keep the team sustained in a fight, and Nano Boost is good for one target, but it can't really match up to Call and Sound Barrier. The Gladiators themselves are going to have to disengage once those come out.
Gladiators are doing a good job of just holding at the corner.
Good
That's
boop.
a wonderful boop. Yeah, that's a whip shot, I think, that came out as skewed there. The Rally as well. That's not going to be enough damage. So immediately, you see this Coalescence and Sound Barrier doesn't get too much work done. Still, the South Destruct will definitely start to put things on the right track here for the Boston Uprising. It's Valentine now back in the Echo form. But ultimately, the Gladiators are the one who were the ones cleaning up this team fight. Stand 1 with a desperate effort in the end as he dove into the backline. He will get chunked down along with Valentine. A minute now for the Boston Uprising. And yeah, the trouble is, when they're trying to push this cart, Josh, and put bodies onto it, Muse has just sat there, and he's got the sustained armor packs, he's got the healing from on high from Shu, and they just can't chunk him and remove him, so they're getting no cart process this entire time.
Yeah, they're trying to push it a little bit, but they just they're trying to take the fight to the Gladiators rather than wait for the Gladiators to contest the payload and shredding anybody who gets down. Again here. Oh, he's so sneaky!
Yeah, I mean, they weren't quite ready for it, and Birdring's going to get away with murder. Death Blossom comes out from M37 to peel, but I mean, it's a vulnerable ultimate. You end up using it, and yeah, okay, just to confuse me a little bit more, here's Kevster's ult. Yeah, there we go. on the Reaper.
Bren, I'm not going to talk about Birdring's Reaper pick anymore. He's a genius. I'm an idiot. He understands the meta way better than I do, and he's getting huge value out of it here. These sneaky little opportunities to drop into the Boston Uprising and go for Death Blossoms, and also just the way that he's been able to frontline for them, it has been so useful for this team. I have absolutely been turned into a believer over the course of the Dorado.
Now Shu with this Death Blossom, that just might be the killing blow. The beam, I mean, it's not inconsequential, I feel like, in the grand scheme of things. It's way too much damage is being outputted, in Boston desperately searching for an opportunity to come back into this one, but into the South Destruct, not going to be happening. Kevster's still alive. The Tri-Shots doing their job. One last player left standing. The Boston Uprising going to be stopping just short of checkpoint B here, and that is going to be the series going the way of the Los Angeles Gladiators in a 3-1 fashion. Ultimately, their adaptability and how they were playing around a lot of the compositions that were Boston playing were the things that gave them the edge. It was looking like, you know, fingers crossed that we may have had a closer game than this. I was hoping for a map 5 at least because of my pick'ems, but that didn't end up happening. But even
No.
still, I think that the Gladiators really did showcase that they are, that kind of. I don't want to dub them as this kind of gatekeeper team because I think they're a little bit beyond that, especially in the June Joust as a team that's shown a ton of potential.
Absolutely. They have a very strong chance of going undefeated in the June Joust. They only have one game left, and they're tearing through the opposition. What I love about the Gladiators is that flexibility and adaptability you're talking about. They're not the same as the other top teams in that they're only playing Orisa comps, or they're only playing the Rush Moira Lucio comps. Instead, they're playing a wide range of different styles, and they look good at playing non-mirrored versions of it. They understand how the compositions work, they understand how to beat them, and they understand what they need to be aware of as well. A really good rebuttal of the Boston Uprising here from the Gladiators. A 3-1 finish, and okay, the mirror battle when it comes back to Oasis to open, they did end up losing that. But everything after that, the Gladiators were firmly in the lead.
Absolutely. And let's take a look at our player of the match, presented by Xfinity. It's going to be going to one individual who we've been singing the praises of the whole series long. It's Birdring. Intelligence was the name of the game when he was playing Reaper. I mean, finding these opportunities on the flank as well, the teleport timings, and just coming in at a different angle as well. It really did throw Boston for a loop a lot of the times. And look at the value he was getting just time after time after time.
Yeah, even this McCree play is very similar to what he was doing on Reaper, where he's finding timings while the rest of his team are distracting his opponent to get in around the back and get these enormous ultimate plays off. The Death Blossom is such a team fight finisher. There's nothing like it in the meta right now. And Birdring is just showing a masterclass in how to play Reaper. I really was skeptical about the Reaper pick on Dorado because it's a map with such long sightlines, especially at Checkpoint B. And Birdring completely proved me wrong. My doubts utterly assuaged. Birdring is a genius, and the flank timings he was finding to get value out of this pick were wonderful. I just want to see more. I want to see Gladiators take on a Dallas. I want to see Gladiators take on the Shock. These kind of scenarios play out, because so far they have beaten every team that they've come up against, including some sizable opponents like the Atlanta Reign and now the Boston Uprising. They're looking like a scary team as we head towards our June Joust play-ins. I'm so excited for those knockout matches that are happening on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be heating up, I think, tremendously. The knockouts on Sunday, obviously, everybody keep that in mind as well. That's what these teams have all been playing for. And we're going to go to a quick break. On the other side of it, we've got an interview, I believe, with Shu as well, so you don't want to be missing that one. And, of course, even more Overwatch League action. We'll see you in just a few moments. See you then.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile.
Welcome to Game Break presented by Pringles. We're joined now by Shu from Los Angeles Gladiators. Shu, congratulations on the big win today. 슈 선수 인터뷰에서 너무 감사하고
네.
오늘 승리 축하드립니다.
감사합니다. Thank you.
Alright, so now Gladiators, for your match right now that just finished, you were pretty much very dominant throughout the whole series except on the first map, Oasis. What sort of happened on Oasis to sort of cause you guys to lose that map? 첫 번째 질문은 어떻게 보면 오늘 경기를 통틀어서 쭉 가면서 첫 번째 맵인 오아시스를 제외하고는 글래디가 굉장히 압도적인 모습을 좀 많이 보여줬는데요. 오아시스에서 좀 어떤 일들이 있었고 어떻게 해서 그 맵을 좀 지게 되셨는지 설명 부탁드리겠습니다.
그냥 이제 루시우 모이라 조합 자체가 아주 조그만 한 실수 하나로 게임이 지고 이기고 하는데 저희가 합이 좀 잘 안 맞았고 좀 스플릿을 좀 많이 해가지고 많이 갈려가지고 저희 실력이 잘 안 나온 것 같아요. 저희 이 조합 좀 그래도 어느 정도 하거든요. 좀 보여줘서 좀 아쉬워요.
Okay, so basically the Lucio Moura comp, the Neo goats that we sort of call it nowadays. You know, this comp really only works when you guys when we sort of perform and we're sort of working as a group. So any minuscule mistakes, any small mistakes that we make can cause us to lose a team fight. So in our match in the Oasis map, we sort of felt like we were split apart often, and we made those small mistakes that cause us to lose the map. And I'm a little bit frustrated because I feel like the Gladiators ourselves are pretty good at this this composition, and we've actually practiced a lot, and we put a lot of time into it. So I'm a little frustrated that we couldn't really show off our Neo Goats skills on Oasis, but that's how we lost to the Boston Uprising for the first map. All right, my second question for you, for you, Shu, is it's actually about Eichenwalde. I think I sort of saw you guys use a very interesting comp with Kevster on Torb, and you guys actually made it work. So my question is, you know, what was the thought process behind you guys using that special Torb composition on Eichenwalde? 그 두 번째 질문은 우리 아이헨발드에서 좀 굉장히 좀 흥미로운 조합을 봤던 것 같은데, 이제 그 케브스터 선수가 토르비언을 이용한 좀 오리사 조합을 쓰셨는데 뭐 끝에 가서는 잘 됐지만은 그거에 대한 좀 그냥 궁금해서 여쭤보고 싶어요. 토르비언을 꺼낸 이유가 뭔지.
일단 보선이 전 경기에서 루시우 모이라를 자주 사용했기 때문에 저희가 카운터 조합을 두고 왔고, 이제 경기 중간에 이제 정말로 그 조합을 들고 나오길래 이 자식도 좀 건방진데? 해가지고 이제 그 조합으로 좀 혼내준 느낌? 완전 혼내줬죠.
Alright. 죄송합니다. 처음에 들어올 때 그러니까 연습에서 쓰셨다고 했나요? 아니면
네네, 그러니까 스크림에서 이제 저희가 그러니까 준비해온 조합. 보선 전 대회에서 쟤네들이
대회에서 봤을 때,
네, 자주 많이 써가지고 그걸 보고 저희가 준비를 해온 거죠.
네, alright. So we've watched Boston's previous matches, and during our scrims as well, we've seen that Boston really likes to use the Lucio Mora or the Neo Goats composition. So when we came into Iron Valde, we thought maybe they're gonna go with the Lucio Mora composition again, and like we saw. Boston Uprising actually pulled out the same composition. So she was saying that, they were actually very surprised that they actually, were running that composition. So the Torbjorn Orisa composition was a counter to the composition that Boston Uprising was using. And she was saying, it was a way to just sort of beat them down and show who the better team was on Eichenwalde, and that's how they won Eichenwalde against the Boston Uprising. One last question for you, Shu. You have one more match coming up. It's against the Paris Eternal. Very simple question. Do you think it's going to be an easy win for you guys? 자, 마지막 질문은 이제 마지막 경기가 될 것 같습니다. 이번 6월 토너먼트에서 파리와의 경기가 있는데 어떻게 좀 쉬운 경기가 될 것 같나요?
네, 제가 오늘 조금 어리버리 좀 많이 까고 조금 상대 전략에 좀 당해줘서 좀 많이 죽고 좀 못했는데 내일 파리는 그 부분을 좀 보완을 하고 아마도 파리는 더 쉽게 이기지 않을까 싶어요. Maybe easy.
Right, so maybe easy or very easy. There's a big difference. Maybe easy or
이거 잘못 말했다고 좀 큰일 나는 거 아닌가? Very easy로 할게요. Very easy.
All right, he's saying very easy. So quickly to translate, she was saying that today he made a little bit of mistakes here and there was some of the stuff that he thought he could have done a lot better. So he's going to sort of fix all those problems going into tomorrow's match against Paris. And he did mention that tomorrow's match against Paris is going to be an easier fight for the Gladiators compared to today. All right, Shu, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for your time and good luck
감사합니다.
on your next match. 자, 슈 선수 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
All right, let's head back to the desk.
Oh, hello. Haha! I am back.
Hi, Zoe.
Hello, nice to hear you. I muted myself because I was sneezing. There we go. A little bit of information for you. More importantly, I want to talk about the Gladiators because this match had major ramifications. Not only did the Gladiators secure their spot in the knockout rounds, they also jumped to the #1 seed above Atlanta and above the Houston Outlaws. They're just remaining undefeated, which is one more match to go. So good stuff from the Gladiators in the June Joust qualifiers. This is the Gladiators we wanted to see coming into this season. We were very hyped up about their squad, and it shows. It really shows finally where their strength is lying. Now, we talked a lot about the compositions we might see heading into this match, and we did end up seeing a lot of, more Lucio Rush, a lot more than we potentially actually expected. Also, we saw both teams experimenting with Orisa and Diva Comp. What do you make out of this, Reinforce?
Well, I think that both of these teams are trying to throw off their opponent by playing some of these Orisa compositions. I think at this point, we overwhelmingly can say that in North America, in a way, the meta is actually the Echo Reaper Lucio Mora composition. The Neo Ghosts, if that's what you like to call it. But on some maps, because of the map design, you can actually try to play this Orisa kind of composition to throw off your opponent. It's a bit of a litmus test. How good are you actually at playing this Neo Ghost composition? On Dorado, for example, or on Eichenwalde, can you play this Ghost effectively enough to flank around your opponents? It was one of the points that I really enjoyed Sideshow pointing out during his cast. How good are Boston Uprising at flanking around their opposition, taking these flanks to attack from multiple angles and then dive collectively onto your opponent? How good are you at this composition? That is where I think the LA Gladiators, they sort of exposed the Boston Uprising a little bit in this match, because we saw in the Echo Reaper composition, Lucio Mora, it was very competitive on Oasis, and that's why Boston Uprising won that map. But then the LA Gladiators on some of these payload maps, that's where we saw them came away with the series, because they were so good at playing these Orisa compositions. The Torb came out from Kevster, and they sort of exposed the Boston Uprising inability to play this Neo Ghost composition when it came to flanking your opponent rather than just playing it straight up mirror head-to-head.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting for me to see how this evolves. I completely agree with Johnny that this Lucio Mora style is here to stay. It is going to be predominantly the composition that we see. But we saw the Gladiators have a lot of success and, as Johnny said, expose the Boston Uprising for not being able to adapt when they do something different, when they play a little bit slower with the Orisa, when they play the Brigitte and the Ana instead of the speed of the Lucio. Boston didn't have an answer to that problem, and that is what I really liked about the Gladiators. They recognized that this Lucio Moira composition is very good, they used it where they needed to, but also made the right adaptations on the right maps to give them an advantage. So I love to see it from Gladiators. Boston, I want to see a little bit more in terms of thinking critically in the middle of a map.
Now shifting gears, looking at our second match of the day. It's going to be a rematch of the 2019 Grand Finals, but well, is it really? A lot has changed ever since then for both of the teams, but the stakes are still very high. The Titans, they do need to win or else they are eliminated. And the Shock, well, they need to win to clinch their spot in the knockout round. And, you know, if they win, we can avoid a very messy tiebreaker scenario as well. So it's in everyone's interest that they're going to, you know, bring this one home here, Costa.
Yeah, and I, as I said, I think the San Francisco Shock, they're angry, very angry. They're on a warpath. They're trying to prove that they are the dominant force that we saw in the last 2 years. While the Vancouver Titans on a very different side of the coin. They're just trying to prove that, hey, we are going to be competitive. We are great players and we are in this league. I want to see that from the Vancouver Titans. They've had a brutal Junjiao schedule, but as long as they can keep making those improvements, that's what we're all looking for. So it'll be an exciting match. I really hope to see the best from both teams.
Absolutely. Now it is time for Pringle's bold prediction, and as you can see here, the fastest match time in league history has been recorded between those two teams, with the Titans being on the receiving end. Now I boldly predict that today these two teams will set another top 5 fastest match time ever. Could be anything. I mean, okay, listen, like, I'm just going by the numbers here. Vancouver is part of 2 of those fastest match times, both times on the receiving end. I don't feel it's a massive stretch for me to make this bold claim.
So you're saying it's
That's
not
why
a
it's called bold
bold
predictions.
Yeah, so you're countering yourself.
Yeah, actually, you're making a good point. No, this is a
Statistically,
very
it might
bold
be kind of
prediction.
likely. Yeah, it might happen, Zoe. You know, if you take a look at the leaderboard, you know, there's 2 there that makes sense.
Would that be the first bold prediction to come true?
Well, didn't we just agree that
The
it
first
wasn't
not
that
so
bold?
Well, no, it's very
To
bold.
come
The
true.
boldest,
Okay.
in fact.
The boldest.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are we sure that Danny's Numbani one didn't count? He almost
Yeah,
got
no,
it
we're
in the
very
first
sure
one.
Almost
that
got
one
it.
didn't
I
come
almost got
true.
it.
It's so close, just off by an entire map and a few details. But you know, whatever. Now I can't promise that this match is going to be a banger, but I am certain it is going to be entertaining. Given that our caster pair for the series are the one and only Doa and CP, I'm still torn on what your caster Archon name is. Are we going with Dopey or Zoa?
I think Dope is just fine. Yeah, we'll take it out. You know? Yeah. Why fight it? Why fight it at this point, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, you know, like you said, this one might be a bit of a San Francisco speed run, but we're hoping we get some good games, right, ZP?
Yeah, that was the hope, right? Where you look at this match here, and obviously going in, it's like, okay, Shock have a bit of an edge, but you look later in the day, and Florida-Washington, definitely some excitement to be had there. So overall, still should be a fun day Overwatch, and also, hey, breadsticks might be had, finally, even if they had the chance.
Breadsticks.
They changed the rules. They changed the rules. Can you just change the rules on that?
I mean, hey, if people aren't getting breadsticks, so you need to find a way to deliver the breadsticks to the people, right?
Yeah, no, it's good effort on their part. I like it.
We're looking out for the boots.
Let's hope for them breadsticks.
Want to see some boots?
There you go. All right. Well, I think it's time, ZP.
It is.
Are you ready? Are you ready for San Francisco Shock versus the Vancouver Titans?
You know what? I just got to have a time machine from 2019. I am ready. Let's get this rematch on the road.
That's right.
Yeah, let's go.
2019 finals rematch. It's going to be epic, of course. Well, you know, then we go to 2020, and like Zoe and the rest of the desk mentioned, it was one of the fastest. No, it was actually the fastest match in Overwatch League history. Vancouver obviously been struggling a little bit. 0-2 in the Junjiao. San Francisco 2-0. So kind of polar opposites there. And San Francisco also looking to prove that they're still the dominant team in the league. Dallas won the Melee. I think San Francisco wants this one, though.
Yeah, they do, and that just makes things so tough for Vancouver. They've been struggling. As mentioned by the desk, they've had an incredibly tough schedule. It's like, ooh, what's next on the list? The San Francisco Shock Revenge Tour. Great. This'll end up well done.
The Revenge Tour. Wow, I don't think there's been one of those since like Blackbeard sailed the seas in, I don't know, whenever that was, like the 1800s. Who knows? Mats will probably tweet at me. Anyway, there's the San Francisco Shock roster: Striker, Neo, Smurf, Choyobin, Violet, and FD God. This is, they are forced to be reckoned with, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is a roster that's incredibly solid. People saw them as being on the top at the beginning of the season. Yeah, they've had some struggles this year, but does anyone look at this roster and go, oh yeah, I'm real happy to play against these guys? No, it's still incredibly strong, and whatever meta they get put in Doha, you can expect them to perform, and as I said, it's probably a rough go here for Vancouver today, but we'll see what they got.
Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of cool for us too, because we're usually casting the APAC region lately, you know, so we're getting to cast some of these great San Francisco players, and we get to cast some of these Titan players as well. There they are: Teru, Dalton, Changsik, Fried Wiener, whatever his name is. I don't even know. He changed it like 5 times. But Rolf, and then Fire, of course, at the end. And this is a team that has struggled, no doubt about it. But, you know, if you're a Vancouver fan, you can say what a lot of people say in a lot of other sports about their teams that are doing poorly. Just tell everyone it's a rebuilding year, right? It's a rebuilding year. We're developing this talent into a force to be reckoned with later on down the line this year. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy the games. Enjoy the individual performances. It should be good.
Yeah, and if all else fails, enjoy the breadsticks, which is
might
be in people's minds the most right now. So look into those supports. See if there's a boop.
Indeed. Well, it's going to be an exciting one. We're going to start things off on Lijiang Tower. As you can see, Hanamura, Hollywood, Junkertown, Oasis. We'll see how far we get into that. A lot of people predicting this to be a 3-0, and understandably so, given the power relatively between these two teams. But, you know, the thing is, ZP, the meta's in a little bit of an interesting place right now. We've got this, like, Neo Goats comps that everyone's talking about. Although I say Goats and I feel a little bit physically ill. I get a little bit worried, you know, when that name starts to come out. But, you know, we also did see the Gladiators have a pretty decent answer to that in the last series. So maybe Vancouver has something special up their sleeves as well. I don't know. The only way to find out is to see the games.
Maybe there's a Torb on deck, you never know. But it just to sort of explain that, because some people at home going, why are you guys calling it Neo Goats? That doesn't make any sense. And, you know, no, there's no Ryan, there's no Zarya, but it's about the feel, Doha, that you get in game, where it's like, if you want an experience meta-wise, where there's a lot of sustain, teams are living for a long time, you're seeing 10 ultimates, you know, you're seeing divas drop down bombs like it's some sort of air campaign in a traditional war. Well, let me tell you, this meta has it all.
Yeah, I mean, it does get insane. I was watching one of the matches from the other day, and there was like 4 Diva ultimates in one fight, and then you've got the Moira beams like flying all over the place. I'm like, all right, okay, so that's just how this is going to be for a while. Well, good luck, everyone. But
it is action-packed.
Yeah, it is action-packed for sure. Yeah.